Live from downtown Detroit, home of WDIV and Click on Detroit, Local 4 News at 5 starts now.
A 5-year-old girl is accidentally shot in the head by her 4-year-old brother. How did he get a hold of a gun? And what is the mother saying about what happens?
Leaders from across Metro Detroit come together to wage war on racism. Coming up, hear their declaration.
Okay, Grant, but we begin with live pictures of downtown Detroit where the heat is on. Another day over 90 degrees, and we haven't even seen the worst of it yet.
Oh, yeah, an air quality alert is in effect as we sweat our way through this heat wave.
Yeah, we want to get right over to Ben, tracking even higher temperatures on the way. Hi, Ben.
Good evening, Kimberly. Jason, yeah, you're right. This is day 5 of the heat wave, and it's pretty much right in the middle. We've got about 4 more days to go. So I doubt we're going to set the record, but it is going to come awfully close. Here are the temperatures we're dealing with today. We have already been to 90 degrees, but you can tell where the rain has gone through a couple spots. We're down to 80 right now in Metro Ann Arbor, trying to climb back from the low 80s there when a thunderstorm rolled through. A couple of those blue bullseyes where the rain has had an effect. So let's go to Storm Tracker 4. Not a lot of activity out there, but the places that are seeing it, a couple downpours and some lightning strikes. You can see that complex rolling towards the airport, really starting to fall apart. So not much left there as it moves off to the east. Now let's check the next 4 days. Air temperatures in the yellow boxes, those are going to be in the mid-90s, so higher than what we've been used to. Plus we start adding in the humidity, and those heat index readings on the left, 96, 99, 100, and 98. Plus those morning lows are going to be higher as the humidity increases. That is going to be the question as to whether or not we see some effects of this heat as far as heat stroke, heat illness, and that kind of thing. We'll talk more about that and see when we finally get some relief in just a few minutes, guys.
Okay, Ben, don't leave a gun loaded and accessible to your children.
That is the message from a devastated mother today after her 4-year-old son found a gun and shot his sister in the head. This happened early this morning on Plymouth Road near Beach Daily in Redford Township. As Nick Monticelli reports, that little girl is going to be okay, but the family will never be the same.
Good evening. We ran into the mother of this 5-year-old girl outside of their mobile home here in Redford, and even she, of course, was distraught, but was very candid, saying that they made a mistake and the gun should have been locked up.
She's doing very good. She's responding. She's healthy. She's perfect. She's smiling. That's all that matters to me as a mom.
She is 5-year-old Karina Norwood. Her mother, Melissa Kaiser, says she is recovering at Children's Hospital after being shot accidentally by her 4-year-old brother. It happened around 1:30 this morning inside of this mobile home on Plymouth near Telegraph in Redford Township.
I heard Karina crying. I can't breathe, and I got to her, and she was bleeding.
She says her 4-year-old son has trouble sleeping. He woke up and went into a back bedroom and then found the loaded gun.
He thought it was a toy gun, and he didn't realize that it wasn't a toy gun.
Thinking it was a toy, he went into his sister's room and shot her in the head. It hit the top of her head, splitting her head open. Kaiser says there is a lot of damage, but Karina should be okay.
Her head's messed up, but she is a really good, strong girl. She's alive, and that's all that matters to me as her mother. And I ask everyone to pray for her.
Mom also says this is a very hard way to learn a lesson.
I just advise all you parents to put up guns and keep them away from your kids, and don't let them be able to get them. A lock in the back room does not work. They're easy to open and get to. My baby got to it.
There were 2 other people inside the home, a 1-year-old boy, he is okay, and the husband whom owns the gun, and it's registered too. It'll be up to the Wayne County prosecutor if the parents face any charges. We're in Redford. Nick Monticelli, Local 4.
Redford police say both parents have been cooperative in this investigation. Karina was originally taken to the Beaumont Hospital in Farmington Hills, but was transferred to Children's Hospital downtown.
Okay, take a look at this chart from clickondetroit.com tracking daily new cases of coronavirus. Today's total of 297 is down from yesterday.
And it's also worth noting the number of hospitalizations has gone down in the past week. Those are the red dots on this graph. And finally, testing is up slightly with an average of more than 15,000 tests per day. You can find all of this data our team has compiled and laid out on our homepage at clickondetroit.com.
With case numbers rising slightly, we're starting to see another trend. Local health departments sending out alerts about potential exposure locations.
We saw one with Harper's Bar in East Lansing, Red Robin in Clinton Township, and most recently the Playhouse in Romulus. The question we had is, how do they figure out those locations? For the answers to that, we turned to Rod Maloney to show us how contact tracing works. Rod.
Well, you know, Jason, it's a situation where it's a three-pronged process in terms of transmission, right? We've heard this before, but it's worth reiterating here. You've got close contact for 10 minutes with no face covering and allowing the droplets to do their infectious thing. And so if you find yourself with symptoms after being in a situation like that, well, the health department wants to hear from you. It's likely going to continue happening. The Playhouse Club in Romulus closed today, linked by the Wayne County Health Department to a dozen cases. Those who were there or at the Checkers just up the street in Romulus should be monitoring for the disease. The health department contact tracing now. Last week in Macomb County, the Mount Clemens Red Robin had 24 employees quarantined and had to close because of COVID as well. Susan Ringler-Cernelia of the Washtenaw County Health Department says if you have symptoms or were there, pick up the phone. That's when the real work begins, calling those in close contact.
We very much want you to answer that call. And if we leave a message to please call us back, we cannot get this information. We cannot do the follow-up in any of this process if we're not able to reach and talk to people.
Susan says you can call the health department to make certain the call you received was not a scam. And while we're all getting weary of COVID, its restrictions, and may even want to hope that its effects are in the past, Susan says we all need to find that second wind.
Unfortunately, nothing's really changed with the virus. It's still circulating. We still have to do this work of tracing cases and alerting folks and all taking responsibility for preventing spread when we're out and about because it's out there.
So contact tracing is about going and finding the people that were around so that they can learn more about the spread, the whys, the wherefores of exactly what happened in that particular case. And it's interesting in that a lot of contact tracing goes on without us knowing about it. It's only when it's in a larger public place that we hear about it in those cases that we just cited. Back to you.
And I'm guessing, right, if somebody was at one of these places, what should they do?
Well, they're going to call the health department. They should, because the health department is going to be asking you things like, okay, your symptoms, and more than that, are you set up so that you can be properly quarantined and healthy and have the services you need, should you need them? That's where it all starts, and then it spreads out from there, finding out who was there with you at that time. Exactly. Yeah, an important roadmap. All right, Rod, thanks.
A search for answers after 2 people are shot on Detroit's west side.
This happened overnight in the area of Livernois and Beachton after 2 cars collided. And that's Detroit police trying to get a crowd to disperse. The shooting could have happened during this street party that police were trying to break up. We're working to learn more about this. Both victims, we do know, are in serious condition. Tonight, Mayor Duggan and the Detroit City Council are mourning the loss of a beloved staffer. DeAndre Watson was killed in an apparent murder-suicide in Westland over the weekend. Police say a second man, Deontez Jones, took his own life inside of a nearby apartment. Watson worked as a policy analyst in the office of Councilman James Tate. He was just 30 years old. Westland police are still investigating.
Meanwhile, police are investigating a shooting that may have started with a crash in Highland Park. Happened this morning on Oakman Boulevard near Hamilton and the Lodge. Both vehicles have significant damage. We're working to get an update on the drivers as well as a possible motive.
Today, a group of prominent civic and business leaders joined forces to send a message.
They're declaring war on racism and coming together to make systemic changes to help win that war. Our Grant Herm shows us how they plan to do it.
New Detroit was founded after the violent racial unrest in the 1960s and has been fighting against racism ever since. And we should say Local 4 General Manager Marla Drutz is a member of New Detroit, and today that group announcing in front of the city's African-American cultural anchor that they'll be fighting racism with a 21st century focus.
Declaring that we are now engaged in intentional, deliberate, and lasting war on racism.
Standing in the midday heat, 30 of Detroit's most prominent business, political, and philanthropical leaders declared they'd be pushing for systematic racial change in their organizations, in education, and in policing.
We'll look in the mirror at ourselves, so our organizations reflect us, but then we'll also do cultural audits of our organizations and learn what we find and address those, which won't be easy and probably won't be pretty, but it's a place to start.
The declaration broad, but necessary, they say, in the wake of protests over the deaths of black men and women at the hands of law enforcement. But it's not just social change. They're also working toward economic change, including health care in the wake of the coronavirus.
Systemic imposition of oppression and denial of resources based on race will, in front of all of our eyes, have devastating consequences.
For every dollar that a white family earns in income, a black family earns 57 cents. For every dollar that a white family has in wealth, a black family has 7 cents.
A link to New Detroit's declaration will be up on clickondetroit.com. Also announced today the reopening on Friday of the Charles Redd African American Cultural and History Museum. The president of the museum saying they hope to remain a resource for those looking for a better racial education during these times right now. In Detroit, Grant Herms, Local 4.
All right, Grant. Still to come on Monday, a Trenton mom refuses to give up hope.
Just know that we're still looking for you and that my love is never going to stop and it's never going to end.
New tonight, what this mother believes happened to her teenage daughter who's been missing for a year.
And criminal charges come down for an encounter in a grocery store parking lot.
But first, there are so many options, it's hard to know where to even start. Dr. McGeorge has the key things to look for when buying a face mask online.